Hello and welcome to the Federal. US astronauts Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore, who were stuck on the International Space Station for over 9 months, are likely to return to Earth on the early hours of March 19, Wednesday, as per Indian Standard Time. Though the splashdown time has been decided, it will really depend on the weather conditions on that day. The two astronauts went to International Space Station thinking that they'll be back in 8 or 10 days, but then uh, subsequent events made them stay much longer, and they have been there for nearly 9 months. To discuss this and more, I'm joined by Dr. V. Selvamurthy, who's currently the Chancellor of Chhattisgarh and Raipur, Amity University's Chhattisgarh and Raipur wings. He was earlier in DRDO. He has served Defense Research and Development Organization as DG, Director General, for over 40 years. And most of his time he has spent in health-related life sciences research. He has also, an expert in nanotechnology application in the field of defense and other research related to soldier support. Uh, Welcome, Dr. Selvamurthy. As I was saying earlier, Sunita Williams and Butch Wilmore went to the International Space Station thinking they'll be back in 8 to 10 days. But then, while they were there, they're also supposed to test Boeing Starliner, the spacecraft. But it didn't work out that way, and they had to stay much longer because there's some problems with the Starliner. So they have stayed for nearly 9 months. Generally, the astronauts are trained to stay in space for much longer durations. There have been others in the past who have done, a longer stay. So, what's the big deal? Why there is so much concern being expressed around the world?
Now, first of all, we are very happy that both the astronauts are coming back maybe by tomorrow, the next 24 hours. And this is a good news. And also, particularly, Sunita Williams being a person of Indian origin, there is also a lot of excitement from India that our own person is coming back after staying there for 9 months. And they were constrained to stay back for 9 months. But then, as you rightly said, the selection of astronauts is made in such a way, the profile of the person, they look at physical profile in terms of anthropometric dimensions. They look at the physiological profile, that how does the cardiorespiratory compensation will occur to a hypogravity or a space environment, that how will it affect the cardiovascular adjustments to a low gravity situation. So this is also the physiological aspects, including the muscular degeneration, which happens because of the disuse atrophy, which a system undergoes. So when you select, you look at one side the physical profile, the other one is physiological profile. The third one is very important, the psychological resilience. So we look at their personality traits and how would they manage the psychological stress like sensory deprivation, monotony, and also fear of the unknown. So all these factors is going to impinge on the astronauts, their health, as well as the work efficiency. So this is what is the selection method, that they select the people who can face these challenges.
But I just want to interject you here. I
Yeah,
just want to know that, they went to stay there for only 8 to 10 days. So
right.
probably that's a kind of mental preparation. That's a kind of physical preparation,
Yes.
they would have made. I mean, the number of items they would have carried, the
Yes.
experiments planned, all those kind of things. So in a situation like this, suppose I go from town A to town B, I prepare myself for 2 or 3 days. I take my clothes accordingly. I take my other personal belongings
Right.
likewise. But
Right.
then it isn't much. I can always catch a next available train or a flight and come back. But when you go to
Yeah.
space, what are the kind of mental pressure it puts on an astronaut? What are the kind of situation they would have faced there?
See, I would first of all say the psychological stress is phenomenal, because it's a question of survival. Because it is just not only the support which you give through the space suit, which will take care of all this, the crew compartment, which is designed to face the challenges there. But then the life support, like for example, the food, as you rightly said, that how much food stock was available. So how did they really manage the carbohydrates, proteins, fats with the food stocks, which might have been planned only for a short sojourn? But now this has been a long stay there. So how did they manage economizing the food available? Because normally they also stop. Because in such the eventualities, there is enough, some buffer is there. But I don't know whether the buffer which they created for stocking the food was sufficient enough. Similarly, water. And how did they manage the water? Did they use the recirculated the water? And so these are challenges, the waste management. Everything is planned for a particular mission, which is a time domain is there. But then this was a challenge, but it's amazing that a few days planning, now a few months, it is a big challenge. They have really done it well, and my salutation to the mission planners, mission executors, and also the actual astronauts who were able to adjust to those challenges. And so they have really adjusted well, and then resilience has been phenomenal. So I'm sure that when they come back, we will know more about it. And because some of the things may not be shared in the media by these people who executed the mission, but we will know when they come back and they will tell their stories, we'll know more about it.
So, I mean, here is an interesting thing. Since you said psychological issues are there, how do they mentally prepare themselves? What are the exercises they might do to keep their mind strong? And what are the kind of situation? I mean, how do they manage it? For instance, you said you have been in DRDO and has done a lot of work on soldier support. Here is we have a soldiers of a different kind. So when they are in space, do they do some kind of a mental exercise? Even does some meditation helps? Maybe yoga. Is there anything you can throw light upon?
Yes. See, the mind control is the very, very important component in such challenging situation. So whether he's a soldier or an astronaut, is prepared well. In fact, during the training program, this is what we do. Whether for soldiers, when they are in NDA, IMA, OTA, we make their life miserable in terms of the routines they have. They have to get up very early morning, go for drills, go for jogging, go for running, and PT exercises. And also now we have added yoga exercise as well. So that is how we prepare the soldiers to face the battlefield in which they will be food deprived, water deprived, sleep deprived. So in such situations, they have to be robust to face those challenges in the battlefield. So that is how their whole life is prepared towards making them so strong to face challenges. Similarly, even in these space missions, the astronauts or the cosmonauts, they are prepared for challenges. First, selecting the people who have that resilience, that is the one step, so that they have them within them to adapt, to also adjust, and to be resilient to face challenges, and then keep the mind cool. This is very important, because in challenging situations, one breaks down, then you give up everything. But then if you are resilient, then mind has so much infinite potentials that you can manifest what you desire to manifest. So that is the power of the mind. So there are yogis who have lived even without food, just by getting the nectar from the higher ups in the higher spiritual powers. So we have done even experiments where the yogis have been living without food, water for days together, and maybe even months together. So they even challenge the physiology of the ketone bodies and all those related to fasting. So similar thing, these astronauts are also prepared for such a challenging situation, and so they have that resilience, they have the reserves. Because body has got its own reserves, carbohydrates, proteins, fats, all that reserves are there in your system, calories. And so that such situations, their repositories, their depots are depleted. And then that is why Sunita Williams have lost weight. If you see her maybe about a couple of months ago and see now. So these are things which have happened, like negative nitrogen balance, protein loss, all this would happen. So but then the psychological component is important more than physiological. Once your mind is strong enough, the body adjusts to those challenges. So the
Yeah.
meditation, as you rightly said, even in 1984, when we had sent Big Commander Rakesh Sharma to space, we taught him yoga, because the isometric exercises which will prevent the muscle loss, keep the muscles. So there are isometric yogic asanas which can do this. So he has been performing the asanas over there. Similarly, mind exercises are there. So you can focus, like concentrating inwards instead of centrifugal. Can you have centripetal force so that you look inwards and conserve the energy, lower the metabolism? So all this is possible once you have the mind control. So this is what is trained to these people, to such, even to like a hibernating animals, lowering the metabolic requirements. So one can do that, like yogis do that. And they go without food for a long time because they are able to reduce the basal metabolic rate to such a low level. So the normal vital signs keep going, but then they are almost like hibernating. So these are the
Yeah.
physiological
So,
resilience which the system has, besides the
right.
mental psychological resilience.
Yeah, so very fascinating. What you're saying is fascinating. And let me take you to some of the physical aspects of it. Like you said, cardiovascular adjustment they have to make. It
Yes.
happens. How do they adjust when, probably your blood cells, I don't know whether they contract or what happens to them. I'm not sure what kind of blood pressures they maintain there. How does it work out? And there are other issues like eyesight besides cardiac health, uh, loss of bone density, and you said muscular atrophy. How do they deal with all these issues?
Yes. See, the first is cardiovascular. If you look at our cardiovascular dynamics, your heart is here, your brain is here. So heart pumps the blood to the brain through the cerebral blood vessels against gravity. Gravity pulls the blood down, but then the heart keeps pumping, and then there is a systolic and diastolic blood pressure and the pulse pressure, which keeps the pressure to have the cerebral perfusion, which is happening, which is not there now, because the gravity which is not there. So the whole blood will rush towards the cerebral system, because earlier in the earth situation you have the gravitational force which is influencing your hemodynamics, which is not there now, that force. So the whole blood will rush, flushing, and then also creating the accumulation of the blood in the core as well as the cerebral. So this is one effect of the cardiovascular. And then when you come down, this cardiovascular deconditioning which occurs. That is why you lift the people when you actually, when they splash down on the sea, when they recover and the rescue is done, and lifting them up, because they have, the cardiovascular system has forgotten its method to adjust, how to adjust to immediately a low gravity, the full gravity situation where blood will be pooling at the lower parts of the body, venous return to the heart will decrease, cardiac output will decrease, pressure will drop, so he will go into syncope. That is why they keep it in the horizontal position and then lift him up. So this is one change which these people will find. You will find when
Mm.
Sunita Williams comes back that she will be lifted, practically lifted, because their cardiovascular system has forgotten to adjust for the hemodynamic stagnation of blood in the lower part due to gravity. The second thing which will happen is on the, so how do they adjust when they are in space? That the cardiovascular system now gets deconditioned. First is conditioned through baroreflex. There is a baroreceptor in the carotid sinus, which is on the blood vessel supplying the brain. That is carotid artery. So this adjusts the phasic variation in the blood pressure. So it will lose. The baroreflex will forget which is conditioned to adjust for the low pressures when it happens due to suddenly you get up from lying down to standing. It corrects because of this baroreflex. Now, this system, after 9 months of stay there, when they come down, suddenly the gravity will pull that, and the system will not adjust. So that is why they will go into orthostatic syncope. Orthostatic syncope. So to avoid this, they are kept in the horizontal and then lifted. The other important thing is muscular wastage will happen. The reason is since man is erect, the weight-bearing muscles and the neuromuscular junctions and the muscles will lose its tone to bear the weight of the individual because they are living in a low gravity situation. So the muscles lose their it's known as disuse atrophy, which will happen because you are not using. If you are not using it, muscles will waste, or there will be a negative protein loss and negative nitrogen balance will happen. So that is why you will see them becoming thinner, because their protein loss would be there, leading to negative nitrogen balance. So this is yet another change you will see in terms of the muscles. Similar thing happens for the bones, because the bones also, the bone mineral density, BMD, if you look at, which will indicate the calcium deposition and bone osteoclastic functions, bone building activities, osteoblastic and osteoclastic activity. So that is bone building and bone destroying activity, which happens everywhere, every time. But then there is always on the positive side. Now these people will lose this bone mineral density, so they are liable to osteoporosis, sometimes even fractures. So that is why they have to be careful not only about muscles, about the bones, joints, weight-bearing bones.
Yeah.
So this would be muscular deconditioning is yet another challenge.
Yeah.
So
So
like this,
a few more things. A few more things. I'm very curious. Actually, what you're saying is very fascinating to me. Which means the entire body, physiology, the way our body functions changes. I mean, we
yes,
have very essential things which are important because it's blood circulation, which is very crucial for brain function, eyesight. How are these things maintained? For when the blood constantly is coming down, and heart is pumping, but the brain must function constantly. Because most of the signals come from brain. How does that happen? How does the eyesight function? Also, I would like to know the ear, which gives a balance to the body, because there's no balance; they're just floating.
yes,
What
correct, correct.
happens to that?
Very, very, very important issues you are talking about. So I'll start with actually your equilibrium, because there are vestibular apparatus which maintains your equilibrium. We don't fall, even though we are just two-legged animals. Our vestibular apparatus, cerebellum and cerebrum. So all this regulate your equilibrium so that you don't fall here. And even if you tend to fall, you correct immediately because of these sensors and the corrective mechanisms available, where the semicircular canals are in the ear, and one side cochlea has got the sensors for hearing. The other side is the semicircular canals, which maintains the equilibrium of the individual. That input goes to cerebellum, and then cerebellum to cerebrum, and the correction occurs in milliseconds or microseconds, so you don't fall. So this is how the equilibrium happens, where gravity is the main factor which keeps on sensitizing the whole body to be in equilibrium. This is not there in space environment, because the force which is actually giving this inputs are the sensory inputs into your semicircular canals, which have got the receptors for maintaining the equilibrium, is not getting any signal. So there is a deconditioning as well. That is why, again, the falling of astronauts, why they are taken in wheelchair or in stretchers, is because they may not have this and they are likely to have fall. but they don't have the control of the equilibrium which they originally had before sojourn to space. So this is one. The second is the blood. The whole thing will rush, as I said, because there is no gravity there in space. So in that, one is the retinal blood vessels, eye, retina. You have retinal blood vessels, there will be a tortuosity. It will just dilate and there will be a retinal tortuosity. And then you will find even sometimes the redness of the eye will happen because of the whole blood rushing towards head and neck region. And so these are challenges, and again, whole brain getting so much of perfusion. So all these are then over a period of time, there is a resilience of the physiological system. Yeah, your system, Homo sapiens, the humans, our system can adapt to high altitude, it can adapt to a hyperbaric condition, it can adapt to space environment. So the acclimatization or adaptation to environment over a period of time takes place. So this will happen depending on the individual's physiological profile, as well as the conditioning which people, some exercises are given for this purpose alone. And so by which we will be able to do the cardiovascular conditioning, the visual adjustments, and also the hearing. Hearing also, because all these receptors are there. In the brain, you have all the control centers like cardiac center, vasomotor center, respiratory center, and feeding center, satiety center. Like all this is the control box. So once the brain functions are modulated, moderated, or influenced, it's going to affect all the functions because that's a control box of our human body. So this is a very important question which you raise, that this is where yoga, meditation, all this will help because you get a control over the mind. You get regulations. And like, for example, there is an ascending reticular activating system, which is in thalamic area, brainstem area, thalamus and brainstem. So it acts like a filter. So when you have such confusion happening in the brain, these filters come on and will allow only signals, what activity you want to do or what sensation which you want to perceive, that will be allowed to go inside. In yoga and meditation, this is what is the practice, that you allow to strengthen these filters, thereby don't allow the noise to enter, but signals only to go up. So these type of exercise will be very, very helpful for people in space.
Yeah. So I have one more question. When they are descending and they have splashed down from space on the sea before the rescue happens, do they also reduce the pressure gradually? Because there are other, like you said, physiological changes that may happen if there is a sudden shock. How do they reduce the shock? What is either a pre also exercises done when they are entering back into from space to Earth to a gravitational situation? Are they? I mean, how are they? I'm sure they are trained at that. How do you even ensure things like that? There is no retinal tear or there is no brain hemorrhage or things like that.
Yes, so these are the crew compartment, recovery crew compartment. Because like you might have seen in our own ISRO testing also, the crew escape system that comes out and then you recover. So similarly, these crew compartment, which is used to bring the astronaut down for during the descent, it doesn't happen abruptly. They gradually, the pressure and of course the temperature is another factor which they maintain, and also the gravity they can't change, but then the hypogravity condition to normal gravity is also gradually adjusted in such a way when they splash down. The whole system is not getting into a shock, physiological shock, but then they are adjusted in such a way that there is a gradual adjustment taking place. But still, even after the recovery, they will take at least a few days for the whole system to come back. So they will be in hospital care, totally under monitoring will be there at least for about 2 weeks. They will be kept in observation. and their movements, everything will be controlled, regulated, till such time the physiology, the normal physiology comes back close to the pre-sojourn to space level. When before that it comes, they keep under the very close observation by trained the physicians and clinicians who will be taking care of their health, which is otherwise, no, it can lead to all that what you said, cerebral
Yeah.
hemorrhage, it can cause the visual disturbances, muscular dystrophy, and orthostatic syncope. All this will be prevented by the close medical care. And so during the descent also, they are not brought abruptly and subjected to a shock of re-entry into the earth environment.
Yeah. So one more question. I think finally the test of this would be when they start walking. What kind
Yes.
of trouble they could have for walking? Because I'm even told that they will have what is called baby feet, because the
Yes.
calluses of the thick portion of the skin may not be there, which
Yes.
we are used to as we walk, and our soles become harder. How do they ensure this, and what is the recovery time in such places? Is it based on individual, or is there a timetable prepared for this?
No, there is a schedule prepared for bringing them back to normal, original life back. It doesn't happen even in a few days. It takes gradually, depending on the number of days of stay in space. Since they have stayed for 9 months over there, so there will be muscular dystrophy. That is, muscle wastage would have taken place. Muscles would have lost its strength. Bone would have lost its mineral density, and also cardiovascular deconditioning might have happened. So all this will be much more pronounced because of this 9 month stay over there. So I think they will be kept in a very, very close observation. And then slowly, like for example, they will be swaying. If you look at their gait will not be normal. They may be swaying initially, trying to correct the balance, vestibular apparatus being retrained for the gravity situation. Then muscles, slowly they will be giving the isometric as well as isotonic exercises to tone up the muscles. There are special diets which will be given to the individual after looking at their what are the nutritional balance in terms of calories, composition of the food, minerals, vitamins, trace elements. So the space diet and the after return, what space the diet has to be given to restore them back to normal. So there will be a dietary schedules, there will be exercise routines, there will be physiotherapeutic routines. So all this will bring them back to normal. So it is a big, the doctors will have a lot of things to do after they return, astronauts come back to the planes. And these are
Yeah.
all trained doctors, especially to deal with such astronauts when they return. So they know the space medicine is itself is a big subject, space medicine and space physiology. So this, they're all trained doctors, so they will take care of these two
Yeah.
astronauts who are coming back tomorrow.
One final question before I leave you.
Yes.
India has our own program, what is called Bharatiya Antariksha Station, and we are preparing for similar missions. We already done some experiments successfully in docking, and we are also preparing astronauts. And one of our astronauts is also likely to go to the International Space Station, I think the next mission. So, since you have been associated with all of this, can you give us some indication of what level of training or what kind of work is happening in this field in India?
See, Indian Space Research Organization is a pride to our nation. Now, today, if you look at the last about 4 decades, and particularly last 1 decade, there has been exponential growth in space missions. Almost every month, 4, 5 programs, major programs taking place in space, Indian space science and technology domain. And right from launch vehicles, SLV, ASLV, PSLV, GSLV. So we have managed to develop a family of the launch vehicles, and the big fat boy is the GSLV. And then that will be used for building our space station, because you need to have a heavy lift payload capacity. So which is now being launch vehicle of that capacity are being built now by ISRO, which is required to build our Bharatiya Antarik Station. The second would be to how do you plan the crew cabins, and how do you send a vehicle which can go there, but it has to come back now. It has to bring this Gagannauts back to Earth. So you
Re-entry.
need to have the re-entry capability also, recovery capability also. So all this during the space manned flight, which we are now planning, ISRO is now preparing for those. So one side the launch vehicles, the other side satellites, and the third aspect is missions, where Gaganyaan is a very important mission where we are looking at putting a human to space, which is a big challenge where safety is the most important consideration. So which the ISRO has already done a number of tests towards the direction without putting a human inside. But as if we are doing a space manned mission, what are all technologies which are required to be developed for this? So like you rightly said, that the docking capabilities. Today, if you see, this space X now has gone and docked to bring the astronauts back. So the docking capability is very important. This is what we recently demonstrated, ISRO recently demonstrated, our precise docking capability, because both are moving bodies. One side, two spacecrafts are moving. So precisely how you bring them in alignment and then lock it is a big challenge, which we have been able to do it. Then the other is crew escape system is very important. If there is a mishap, either during launch or in flight or after landing in close to landing, if there is a problem, how do you bring that crew safely back? So crew escape we have tested successfully. And then the recovery, because DRDO is also part of this ADRDE, that is Aerial Delivery Research Establishment at Agra, which is a DRDO lab, gives these recovery vehicles. And Debel Bangalore looks at, in DRDO, which is Debel Bangalore, looks at the crew compartment design, the ergonomic aspects, spacesuit design, development. Then the food comes from Defense Food Research Laboratory. Space food has its own standards in terms of hygiene, so it comes from there. So we are now integrating our national resources for manned space flight.
Dr. Selvamurthy, it was really fascinating. It was very interesting, all the information you provided. We'll meet again on some other federal interview, but this is wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much to you and to all the viewers.
Thank
And
you.
let's hope that both the astronauts come safely and they lead a happy life again. Thank you.